Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Barden here. Today, let me just make that big. I'm going to go over what I talked about in class, which is a lot of just managing your patch, making it usable and, user friendly is kind of the goal here, making the patch able to be easily understood, organizable, and manageable, with the idea being that you can give it to someone else and they can just open it up and look at it, and there you go. That's the whole thing. So I've got a blank patch open right here, and we're gonna, make some simple stuff, but the idea could be applied to any amount of content here. So I think in class I just did a simple sine wave. I'll do something a little more complex in here as the starting point. So I'm going to just create some simple pink noise right there. So some pink noise to start with. And then I'm going to just do some very simple filtering. Again, nothing crazy. Let's go with a resin object. And for the parameters for this, again, we're going to filter the noise, get some things down. We're just going to have normal gain, 100% value, nothing crazy there. Center frequency, I'm just going to start it at, 100. Why not? Keep that afloat, and we'll have an initial Q of 10 just to start from there. So we're going to go use pink noise into here, and then we're going to go, I'm going to copy this. Let's have 4. So again, just to reiterate what we talked about in a previous class, we're making a subtractive synthesizer here. So we're starting with a source of noise, and we are removing frequencies from that. I just set up, there's 4 resin objects here, so I just made a 4th order filter. So that's what we have going on. I'm going to create a gain control, so that way we can actually control the volume. And I'm just going to throw in an easy DAC right there and connect that up. That one. There we are. So now we should be able to hear some stuff. If I turn that on, turn this up. We're definitely hearing it. It's just extremely quiet because, again, we are removing frequencies. So I think I'm going to actually probably let's just make it a 2nd order filter. Let's just do 2. So got that there, and I may just make the volume slightly louder. So let's just say 1.5. So I'm just trying to get a good starting sound. .5, and I'll make this starting frequency instead of 100 hertz. That's kind of low. Let's just go with 600 and 600. All right, now we're starting to get somewhere. Q of, let's go 50. Okay, I mean 15 works, but I wanted to go higher, so 50. 50, and I'll make them both floats. All right, we've got more of a pitch happening now. I'll just leave that right there. So let's break down exactly what is going on. So there's a few parts of this patch, and generally with all patches, you can kind of break them into sections where different things are happening in different portions of the patch or window. Again, this is a fairly simple one, but in this case, we have, I just throw in a comment here, the sound generation. In this one, we have the filter. We also have the volume control and the output. I think I may just want to stick a very simple like amp option there because it's still extra quiet in this case. So I'm just gonna hop over into beep and let's just find something real quick. Let's see, I think if we play with the output. This is me just kind of going off on a tangent here. We'll probably stick a compressor on that just to, oomph a little bit of gain back after the fact. So I think that's what I want to do. So we'll just stick it here. And then we can just turn up the output just a bit. So we've got a little bit more things to work with. So, and I'll just add this comment. We'll just call this the amp because I'm not wanting to go into a bunch of details about compressors right now. But we've got a few sections. That's the important part right here. We can break this up into a few different sub parts that are a little more manageable. Again, this isn't the craziest patch in the world, but again, we can further optimize things. And then when you do have more complex patches, tons of objects, MIDI data, synthesizers, routing of different things, and just all kinds of stuff. They get more and more complex the more specific of a goal you have, and you start adding it in. It gets more and more, and we can optimize it. And the concepts here will transfer over to when you're actually doing useful things. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave the pink here because that's just the main sound generator. Like that's just a single object. We're just going to leave that as is for now. But we're going to put the filters into a abstraction, and then we'll put the compressor into a sub patch. And again, this will be pretty simple, but I'm hoping just the core concepts are what we get across. So what I'm going to do, if I'm going to put the filters into a an abstraction, what an abstraction is it's one max patch loaded into another. So you can save it and load it into any project that you are working on, which is incredibly helpful because you can, make different instruments and tools and effects and just drag and drop them into your session, which is awesome. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start by saving this one. I'll just put this all on my desktop so it's easy to find, nice, quick, and simple. So we'll call this my sub synth. It's a subtractive synthesis happening here. There we are, my sub synth.max pat. Cool, we've got that right there. I'm going to make a new max patch over here. And like I said, this is all really, really basic. Window. There we are. We'll have that there. So I'm going to basically duplicate the filter array that I've got there. So resin 0.5, 650. And maybe since we've got that gain, that makeup gain, I'll put it back at 4 for now. So 2, 3, 4. Boop, boop, and boop. And why not? We'll make it stereo just for fun. So I'll make some room right there. So this patch is going to be our tool that we can use, but we want to be able to control it. Essentially, we're turning this whole patch into just a single object that we can use. So we need to be able to send and receive data from it, and there's a few different ways that we can do that. The first is probably the simplest, and that is the inlet object. And this will let us receive data. It creates these little, inlets right here at the top of a patcher object. So if I just connect that up right there. Boom. And we'll move this over here to the other channel. Connect that one up. There we are. So that'll be our inlets for left and right, the audio signal. And then I want to be able to control these other parameters right here. I'm going to make some space between all of these. Just like so. Yeah, that'll work for now. So I want to be able to control the various parameters. And with the resin object, basically each of these inlets controls the three values we put here. So this is the input gain, the center frequency, and the Q factor. So we can set it up with a default, but we can change it over time however we want. So I'm going to create 3 more inlets. So we're just going to go over here, 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to make just 2 outlets. Oop, it helps if I spell outlet correctly. There we are. So we'll connect one up here and the other up here, because we'll send in the data to control it, but all we're getting out is the audio signal that's been affected. Now, one thing we can do is to connect this up to every single inlet here, and this will be fine, but I'm just doing this to illustrate. This is a lot of patch cables. Again, we've effectively got 3 times 8 different connections, and I don't want to have 24 patch cables just going across my entire patcher. That's a pain in the butt to read and understand and figure out. So we're going to use the send and receive objects instead. So create a new object. It's called send by default. I'll type 1 as send, but I usually like to use the abbreviation instead. But we have to give it a label. So I'm going to say send, and this will be I'll call this filt gain right there. And we'll just boop, connect it to this input right here. I'll scoot these over just to make room. There we are. And I'll make, again, we can abbreviate it just with S because this is used a lot. And this will be center frequency. And I'll make the last one send Q. Right there. So boom. And I'll nudge that over just a bit more. So there we go. We've got these 3 sends. And what the send does is it will send data places without the need for patch cords. And all we have to do is have Max say receive that data. So receive is the object name, and we have to give it the same label that we gave the send. So if I call this one filt gain, has to be spelled exactly the same way, capitals, symbols, everything and all. We'll type that there. Then whatever is sent to the input of this filt gain object here, the send, any receive with the same label will output that same data. So you can have multiple receives all with the same name. And I'm going to boop, stick that right there. And then I'm going to copy and paste. And we can set it up like that and have multiple going. I'm actually going to not do that, and we're going to just build up 1 for right now, and then I'll show you the next thing we're going to do, which is a sub patch instead of an abstraction. So we'll create that there, and then just like sends, there you can just abbreviate it to R, which is what I usually like to do. So this is center frequency, and that's going to connect boop to this one. And then our capital Q will connect here. There we are. So now what we can effectively do is when we have this loaded up, we'll be able to send data into these inlets, and it will automatically send it right to the resin objects without the need for a million patch cables. However, like I was mentioning before, you could have multiple receives set up for all of this, but that still gets very cluttered, not a lot of fun. So I'm going to make a sub patch with the patcher object. Again, you can type out patcher, but just like send and receive, because this is used a lot, you can actually just type out P, and it's the same thing. This is what I always use, just P, quick and easy. And you just give it a name. So this will be, I'm just going to call it my filter. I'm just going to say my filt, actually. Going to stick that there, and it's going to open up a new window, and you'll see actually that its name is in brackets, indicating that it is a sub patch. And I'll talk about the difference between a sub patch and an abstraction in just a second. But for right now, we're going to actually do a lot of very similar things right here. So I'm going to create a few inlets. There we are. 1, 2, 3, 4. What we'll need. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you'll notice that because this is a sub patch, that these are labeled with numbers as opposed to just being in general, just inlet and outlet. And the reason for that is because this patch is loaded inside of our untitled 2, because I haven't named it yet. So they are given an order because we can start connecting stuff to them already. And every time I made an inlet, one appeared here on the object. So handy right there. And then we're going to need a single outlet. And then see, an outlet popped up. It's number 1. These are going to automatically reorder themselves with the number. So if you were to move this one over here, it becomes number 4. It's effectively whatever is furthest to the left. And then if there's multiple there, it's whatever's on top. So I like to just put my inlets at the top, my outlets at the bottom, and just go in order. So we've got that right there. I'm going to then just copy this and paste it over here and connect up that first one. And actually, I don't think we need these other ones because we'll just set it up like this. Boom. So what I'm getting at here is that sends and receives can work inside a single patch or inside of any sub patches and abstractions. As long as it's open and loaded and running, and they're all talking to each other, you can use send and receive across sub patches and instances and things like that. So we don't actually need all of these inlets. We can just send it to the filter gain, and the receive, even though it's located here inside of my filt, it's still going to get that data. So what we can do now is just get rid of all of these and connect up my filter and just copy 4. There we are. 4 right there. And then copy these over here. Boom, for the right channel. And now we've essentially turned this into a tool. It's our own custom 4th order filter where we can control the various gains, center frequencies, and Q. And it's a stereo filter, but they're the same properties on both channels. So that's important just to distinguish right there. The last thing I want to point out is that for all of these inlets and outlets on any object that's already made in Max, you'll notice if you hover over them, it will say specifically what that inlet and outlet does. And you're going to want to do this in order to have any kind of user functionality. If you just have, in this case, there's 5 inlets on this patch right here. If you don't say what they are, people are going to have to trial and error and things are going to break. So what we can do is just select the inlet and outlet, hop over to the inspector, and whatever you type in the comment field will be what displays over the inlets and outlets. So this is audio in, audio out for here on the sub patch. And then over here, if we click on one, go over to inspector, audio left, in, audio left, out, misspelled audio there, hop over here, AUDIO, right in. Apparently I just deleted that somehow. Audio right out. We'll call this filter gain. And this will be also float. I always like to label what the data type is when necessary, or like what the range is, just so people know what to expect. So this will be center frequency. That one's self-explanatory. I don't need to say it's a frequency. But just to be safe, float. And then Q, which will say between 1 to 100, because that's the range. And that's also a float. The general practice, and I'm not saying this to try to insult anyone, but it's just to assume that whoever is going to be using your software is an idiot and doesn't know anything at all. So just when in doubt, label things. All right, so we've got that part going right there. So this is where we start talking about the difference between a subpatch and an abstraction. So a subpatch exists within the main patch. So these are, it's 4 copies of this filter, but it only exists inside of currently untitled. I'm going to save this. No, I'm going to save this, and we're going to call this my filter. I'm going to save it to the desktop right there. So this myfilt only lives inside of the myfilter maxpat file. I can't load this into anything else other than right here. But because I've saved this here, this myfilter as an object, I can then load it into any max patch. So there's a few ways we can do this. If I hop into my desktop here, here's the myfilter.maxpat. I can just drag and drop it in. Boom, there we are. Myfilter.maxpatch. And I had this open in there, so it opened it up again. But if I load this up over here, I just dragged and dropped it. It's myfilter.maxpat. It's got the various audio left in, right in, everything we did before. It's right here, just as an abstraction. So because this is saved as a maxpatch file, you can load this into any other max patch that you are using. It's, as far as Max is concerned, it's just like these other objects that are built into it. We just stick it in there. You technically don't need the .maxpat. You can just say myfilter. You can see it's got the P there because it's a patcher. Same thing, loads up just fine. I personally like to have the .maxpat after it, and it likes to open that up because I had it open beforehand. The reason for that is that if you send off this my subsynth to someone else, they're going to need the myfilter file as well. Otherwise, when they load it up, this is gonna be yellow and it's gonna say there's no object does not exist. So by labeling this as .maxpat, at least for me, it lets me say, oh, this is an abstraction. I need to make sure that they have this file as well whenever I send it to someone. All right. first part's there. So we have made an abstraction and a subpatch. So I'm just going to stick this right over here, connect up audio left and audio right, pink noise going into both. And again, we've got the default sounds from before. If we've got our sound. And then I'm going to load up a few float objects here. So filter, actually, no, I'm going to do let's do it like this. I'm going to change you to a gain object. I'm going to specifically output the last one, the slider value, and not the signal here. And then, let's see, the center frequency. Let's make you a dial just for funsies. I don't want the live dot. I want this dial. Center frequency. I'm just going to manually set the range from, let's say, number of steps. Let's say 5,000. Minimum value of 100. Why not? There we go. So we've got, that's for all of our frequencies. And then the Q, I'll also do a dial, but I'm going to change this to be from 1 to 100. There we are. And connected that. It's a little more fun than a float, but just to make this a little more user-friendly, I will also stick this in here so we can at least see the number as well. Right there. So we'll be able to see what is going on. I'm going to leave the compressor as it is, just because it's already a made thing. I'd feel weird saying, and here is my compressor, and it's just the same thing. So that is the first part. If we want to be able to control this, we can do exactly that. If I lock the patch, turn up the output gain, I'm just kind of playing around with it at this point. I think we're going to turn that down. I think I actually just don't want that gain control. I just want to leave it at the default for what we've got here. So I'm just going to hop into this into edit mode, and we're just going to get rid of that completely. Like I said, it was starting to overload some stuff. I just didn't like it, so we're just going to completely get rid of that and just have the dials. So we've got that right there. So again, that was the first part of our last class, which is talking about creating subpatches and abstractions. The next part was talking about the presentation mode and just, again, organizing a lot of this. So the first thing I'll show, just because it's rather quick, is that you can route your various patch cables. The way I like to do it is Command or Control A to select everything, and then Command or Control on Windows, Shift Y will route the patch cables. You can also, once you have it selected, go to Arrange and Route Patch Cables right there. And this just lines everything up, makes them straight connections. It helps just to organize a lot of things. So definitely handy. Make sure that nothing is, no patch cables are overlapping any objects. All right, so that was just quick and easy right there. The next thing I'm going to mention is, again, presentation mode. So we can essentially take what we have here and isolate just the user interface objects, these things with the graphics that you're actually interacting with in order to create a more functional and user-friendly interface, basically like we have right here. So what we can do is select the objects that we want to be able to control. So I'm going to hit on the Mac control to select them. And if you hit add to presentation, it's going to put this very faint outline around the object. So I'm going to shift click to click all of the other objects that we interact with, which are these 5 right here. Control click for the menu, add to presentation. And if I click down here, this presentation mode, you'll notice that only these are here. So now what we can do is arrange this however we want to arrange it. So we're going to create a handy little tool here for us. So I'm going to stick this up there. We can move these here. Maybe I want these dials to be a little bit bigger. Like that. I'll give them a label. So this is the Q, and this is the frequency. And I can just stick it. Nope. I just want to make this shorter. I'll put it up here instead. Frequency. Q. Stick the output gain. And actually, if I hop out of presentation mode, you'll see that everything lines up. Goes back to what it was before. But I'm just going to create a second gain object like so. So that way we have our stereo gains. Hop back into presentation. Stick you right there. Let's actually shift you over. Make you a little bit bigger. Put it there. And we'll stick it there. So again, output gain. And we'll just boom right there. That'll work. Well, this will be our graphic interface for the thing. Actually, yeah, I won't play around with scopes. This video is already going to be long enough. But we'll pretend this will be our interface right here. So you'll notice again, all of the patch cables go away in presentation mode, and we can set this up and arrange it however we want. But it doesn't change how things are hooked up over here. If you go out of presentation mode, it just jumps back to how it was, and then it sets things up here. So if I go turn this up, still totally functional. The last few things I showed everyone were just formatting things, nothing super necessary. If you have the inspector open but nothing selected, you can open up the patcher inspector, and this is where you can set a bunch of things like fonts and text alignments, stuff like that. I like to say open in presentation. So now whenever we load this patch, it's going to open in this view first, and then we can always toggle out of it after the fact, but then it'll default to it. And then I always like to set a locked patcher background color. So it's gonna be, I apparently have this blue saved here, so we're gonna do that. So anytime the patch is locked, it's just gonna turn to this blue color. Looks a lot more just polished and done than what we had before. And you can also change different colors and things in these objects as well. Like if I selected, if I selected these, I could change the value color. Maybe I want this to be green instead. And so now we've got green faded. You can set it to be whatever you want. Super handy. So we've got presentation mode there. I can save my subsynth, and boom, Bob's your uncle. So you can use it just like this. Totally fine. Works great. Or If we make a new patch, close this one out, hop up in here. My sub synth. Got that right there. We can load this in and out of things. I didn't put any inlets or outlets in this object when we made it, so it doesn't have any here. But there's another thing we can do. This is the last thing we talked about in class. That was to create a object called bpatcher. So the bpatcher is just like loading in an abstraction, but it shows the graphic interface that we made. It shows what the patch is inside of this window. So if we have it selected, hop over to inspector mode and tell it which patcher file to use. We're going to choose my subsynth, open that up, and now, if I just resize this, here is the contents of my subsynth. So we can delete that. But now, if we lock this, works just fine, only now it is a single object loaded into the bpatcher. So now we can just drop this into anything that we're doing, load it up. It's super simple to use. You've got that graphic interface. One thing to note, though, is that we can have a few issues. So if we want that blue, you'll notice it's not there. Even we set the background color. So if you wanted that, we can go in and just create a panel object. And this panel object just displays a color on there. So if we change the interior color, if I want it to be a fill color, not a gradient, set it to blue. We can just make it line up with our bpatcher. There we are. And if we right click it and send to back, there you go. I overshot it just a little bit. There we are. But now here are these, and we can just move them around. They're overlapped, nice and easy. There you go. This looks a lot more done and professional and easy to use than just go to window. No, that won't work. Than just the patcher by itself. I don't want to go back in and load it up, but this was everything we talked about in class most recently. Again, just making your patches a little more easy to manage and a lot more presentable for uses. So I hope this was helpful. This is all I have for today, and I'll see you all the next time that I see you.